In this tutorial, we are going to create a brochure design in Adobe InDesign. This tutorial is for beginners. We are going to make a 4-page folding brochure. We will learn to work with type, flow text, crop and resize images, and more. You can download the source files in the YouTube description so you can follow along with the exercise. Let's start by setting up our document and designing the cover. Let's go to File, New, Document. We are going to choose a preset in the print settings. So go to the top and click print. We are going to choose letter. And on the right hand side, let's modify some of these settings. The size looks correct, 8.5 by 11. Make sure it's set to inches. We want portrait orientation. For right now, since we're starting with the cover, let's turn facing pages off. This is when you want to set up a multi-page document, which we will do later. Scroll down. Let's set up margins at 1 inch. So I'm going to just click the arrow to go up to 1 inch. If these are not all changing at the same time, make sure the little link button is selected. And let's turn on some bleed. I'll talk more about bleed as we get further into this exercise. So click create. Now let's go ahead and save our document. Go to File, Save. Before we get into design, let's make sure our workspace all looks the same. So go to Window, Workspace. I like to use the typography workspace personally. You can also use Essentials. So what this will do, this might change some of the settings and some of the buttons that you see around your artboard. First thing we're going to do in this document is create some color boxes and create some new swatches. So let's use the rectangle tool on the left and just draw a shape. So click and drag and create a shape. I just drew a rectangle. So you may or may not see the rectangle filled with color once you do this. Mine does not currently have any color in it. So let's change that. Let's add some color. Go to your swatches panel. You should see it on the right hand side. If not, you can find it in Window, Color, Swatches. We have some preset colors that are already loaded into InDesign. So just click through these colors. In my swatches panel, there's 2 little boxes. The first box that's on top is the top left, and that one is actually showing the color that is in my shape. And then the one beneath it is for a stroke. So let's add a stroke. So you need to click the little stroke icon and go ahead and add a stroke color. Mine's a little hard to see because the stroke is really small. So I'm gonna make this bigger. You can see that I do have a stroke on this shape with the little swatches here. But up top on my computer, I see the stroke weight. I'm going to click this number up and make the stroke weight heavier. You can also find stroke on the right hand side. Let's try to also swap these colors. If I wanted to swap the color and put the green inside and the red on the stroke, all you need to do is go to your swatches here. There's a little arrow up top between the two, and you can just click the arrow to flip the colors. Okay, we are next going to create some custom swatches for our design. So go to the right-hand side of your swatches panel. There's a little hamburger menu. Click on the hamburger menu and select New Color Swatch. A little pop-up should appear, and this is where you can type in specific color codes that you want to use in your design. For color mode, we are not prepping this for print. We are just using web colors for this project. So I'm going to choose, instead of CMYK, we'll choose RGB. We're going to create 3 color swatches, a tan, a light blue, and a dark blue. So I'm going to provide the color codes that you need for each color. You can also find the color codes in the project files. So 183, 117, 59. And I'm just choosing to name this with the color value, but you can also give your swatch a name if you'd like. So there's our first color swatch. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill this shape with my color swatch. So I swapped it to my new color swatch. And let's get rid of our stroke. With the stroke selected here, just select none. Okay, next color swatch. Say new color swatch, go back to RGB. Next color swatch is 210, 220, 222. It's like a light blue gray. Click OK. And let's go back to our swatches and add one last swatch. New color swatch. This one will be a dark blue. 129, 142, 158. Okay, and this one's a dark blue, kind of a slate blue. Click OK. Okay, now I have 3 color swatches ready for my project. I'm going to click off of my shape. You can also remove color swatches from the swatch area just by clicking and holding and drag it to the trash can. So if you want to clean this swatch area up and delete the colors we don't need, which are these colors here, you can get rid of them. So next thing we want to do, let's make this rectangle full screen and have it go off of our canvas into our bleed. So resize that rectangle by clicking and dragging the edges to that bleed space. And one last thing, let's actually make this background color our dark blue. So let's get rid of the stroke on it, select none on the stroke, and select the color swatch and make it our dark blue. All right, let's add a couple more rectangles on top of this design. So go back to your rectangle tool, and around the bottom third of this design, I want to add a tan rectangle. And let's select our tan color. And then the last thing I want to do, I want to add a third rectangle on top of these that overlap the two. I'm going to click and hold and drag. And let's select our lighter color, this light blue gray. That is how you make custom color swatches and draw rectangles into your design. Let's talk about a couple shortcuts and tools you can use in InDesign. So with this zoom tool on the left, you can click it and zoom in and out of your artboard very easily. Hold down the Option key to get to the negative zoom, so zoom out and zoom in. These boxes, you can reorder them and send them to the front and back very easily. So you can right click on a shape or an image or anything in your artboard and select Arrange and send backward or forward. I'm going to right click this shape on the bottom and say Arrange, send backward. You can also rotate objects very easily. So using our rectangle as an example, if you hover over the edge of your rectangle, you'll see this little rectangle with 2 arrows. You can click and hold and rotate it very easily. And to undo it, click Command Z. And the last thing, you can hit the W key to hide all of your guides and your bleed. This is a really fast way to preview your document. So W key. Okay, next, let's add some text and work on formatting in our brochure cover. Select the text tool in your toolbar on the left. I like to start with text off of the artboard just so it doesn't interfere with any of my art. So I'm going to use the text tool and click and drag and make a box. So type the word relax. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. And next we are going to use the character panel to change the font. So go to the character panel. I see it in my right toolbar. If you don't see it, you can go to Window, type in Tables, Character. So with my text selected, let's change the font to any font. We're actually going to change this in a minute to something different, but just find any font and change it. And let's make it bigger so we can see it better. In our character panel, we can change the font weight. We can change the leading and the font size right here. And let's make this text white instead of black. So I'm going to my swatches panel. I'm going to select paper. Paper is based on the color of the paper, and usually paper is white. So that's why it's called paper. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. So I have a box that says relax. I'll drag it down. Next, I'm going to copy and paste this text box. So I now have two text boxes, and I'm going to replace this second relax with Outer Banks NC. Let's change the Outer Banks NC to be all caps instead of title case. So I'm going to select it, click character, click the hamburger menu, and say all caps. And let's drag these into our text box so they are on top of our light blue. And now that I'm looking at this, this white doesn't really work. So let's go back to our swatches. We're going to actually use the tan color instead. So select your text and make each of these tan. Adobe Fonts has a huge font library that you can plug right into your Adobe products. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change these fonts using Adobe Fonts, not exactly what you have on your computer. So the word relax, let's select this one first. Go to your character panel, and in the font area, click the little down arrow. And this is where you can browse all the fonts on your computer. But up top, there is an area called Find More. I want you to select that. This is where you can browse all of Adobe's fonts. And there are thousands of them. You can just scroll through. You can also type a font name. I'm going to type in DIDOT for a font called Dido. And I want the Dido LT Pro Bold. That is the font I'm looking for. And so if you find this font in the Adobe Fonts, on the right-hand side, you hover over it, there's this little cloud with an arrow. So if you click the cloud with the arrow, you may have to click it a couple times, it should begin downloading for you. And you should then see a little check mark next to Dido LT Pro Bold. I'm going to go over to my relax text and just type this in. So now if I go to my fonts and I scroll to the D's, you should see Dido LT Pro. And I'm going to select it, and now I have changed my font to an Adobe font. Let's now do Outer Banks. So I'm going to select Outer Banks. I'm going to select the down arrow, go to Find More. I'm going to type in Roboto. And I actually want a Roboto Light. So I'm going to scroll down to Roboto Light. I actually already have this one activated, so there's already a check mark next to it. But you can activate Roboto Light on your computer. And now let's go to my document and choose Roboto Light. Okay, now let's adjust these font sizes. I want my fonts to fit nicely inside this box. I'm going to make Outer Banks a little bit smaller. And let's make Relax a little bit bigger. If at any point your text does this, it starts to disappear out of the box, it's because your text box is not big enough. You might see a little plus sign on the edge of the box. All you need to do is just resize your box. Okay, I adjusted my font placement. Let's hit the W key and just see what this looks like. Let me show you how to group elements. So let's say you wanted to move this whole box, the light blue box with Relax and Outer Banks. You wanted to move it around our document. You would have to do this, move them individually, and that's just kind of a pain. Command Z. So what you can do is you can select all three elements. So click each text box and hold down the Shift key and click another element and another element. So I now have all three of these elements selected. And then you can right click and say group. And it now put these three elements together into one element that I can move around. You can also right click and ungroup very easily. All right, let's talk about images. We are going to add an image where this blue box is currently. Click on the top box or the box that's around the whole background. And let's remove the color. So go to swatches and let's click none instead. But we still have this box selected. So let's go to File, Place. In your practice files, you should have an image of a lighthouse. So that's what I'm going to put here. I'm going to select it on my computer, click Open. So this lighthouse, build the shape. Let's adjust the placement of this image in our document. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. If I hover over the image, you will see this circle appear on top of the image. You can move the image around with that circle. And when I do that, you can see this kind of golden box that appears around it. That is the edges of my image, and it is inside a shape. So all I can see is what's inside the shape. But this image is actually much bigger than the shape. I'm going to select it, and holding down the Shift key, I'm going to click one of the edges of this image, and I'm going to make this image smaller. So click and hold and drag with the Shift key. Some other ways that you can adjust this image size inside our rectangle. There's some options on the top in your properties panel, and they are options that will fit an image inside a shape for you. So I see them up top here when I'm using the typography workspace, and you can click these and just see what happens. It's gonna give you different results based on which one you click. So these didn't really give me the result I wanted, so I am going to click back on my little circle and then using the Shift key, click and drag to adjust my image. You can also flip an image. So select the image, and up top in my properties panel, there's an option to flip an image. So if you wanted to flip it in your artboard and have it look like this, you could. Okay, I actually want my lighthouse to be at around 1/3 line of my design. That's just part of the rule of thirds, is not exactly having everything centered in your design. Just a quick note about images. We are not prepping this image or this brochure for print. If I were prepping this for print, there's more that we would need to investigate about the resolution of this image. But for now, we are just focusing on the design of this graphic. Okay, now that we have created a cover for this document, we now need to add pages. This is a brochure. It's going to be a 4-page brochure when we're finished. So we need to add additional pages, and we need to learn how to flow in text. So let's get started. To add in additional pages to our brochure, we can do this a couple ways. Go to the Pages panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also get to this by Window, Pages, and you should see a little pop-up over here. So currently, we just have a 1-page document. You can see the 1 page is here. I can't scroll any further, and we only have 1 page here. So what we're going to do is we are going to add 3 additional pages to this file. And we're going to do that by clicking the little plus sign at the bottom of our Pages panel. So let's just go ahead and click it. Add 1, 2, 3. So we now have a 4-page document with 3 blank pages. So this is okay, but we are designing a brochure. And when you're actually looking at a print brochure, or even a brochure on the web, you have a cover. You usually have an inside spread, which is 2 pages that are put together, and then you have a back cover. And that's how we want to design. We want to design like we are holding a brochure. So we need our middle pages to be a center spread and to be laid out like that in our document. So one way you can make that edit is to go to File, Document Setup. And we are going to just select the option of facing pages. So select that. And when I did that, you can see in my Pages panel that the middle two pages are now facing each other. So facing pages. So we now have a cover, a center spread, and a back cover. So click OK. If I just scroll through my document, you can also see that these blank pages are now together. Let's learn about flowing text into our document. So I'm going to import some text into this brochure. In the practice files, you should have had a couple text documents, and that is the text that we're going to put into this brochure. So go to File, Place, and in our practice files, the text we're going to use first is called OBX Brochure Text 1. So just select Open. And when I cover my cursor over my design, you can see text attached to my cursor. What I need to do is I need to click and I need to drag a text box. And it populated the box with some text. So a couple things you need to know about text boxes. This box is pretty big right now, but if I were to make this text box smaller, you can see that I'm missing some text now. But you'll notice there's a little red plus sign box at the bottom. If I click on this, I now see text on my cursor again. I can drag another text box next to it. It actually flowed text from this first small box into the next box. So here's another plus sign. This indicates that there's more text outside of the box that I can't see. So if I click that again and draw a third text box, now I can see all my text flowed from one box to the next. And if you delete text boxes, it doesn't delete the text because the text is still in this original text box we created. So you just have to flow it again and it's all there. And I'm going to hit the W key. The W key, just a reminder, shows you your guides. I'm going to move one text box to one spread and the other to the first spread. And I'm going to move this first text box into the bottom of the first spread, and I'm going to have it fill the space from margin to margin. And then I'm going to move this second text box to be aligned with it at the top. So we can actually add columns within these text boxes. So we're going to add 2 columns into the first text box. In your Properties panel, you can find the Properties panel here on the right in your tools. You can find it up here under Window. And in my view, I can actually see the Properties panel at the top of my screen. So with this text box selected, I'm going to add another column with this area up top. So I can click the up arrow and it's going to change this to 2 columns. I can then change my gutter, which is the space between the columns, with this little adjustment section below the columns. We're going to work on our layout a little bit more. So we need to add some guides into this center spread. So go up to Layout, Create Guides. For this center spread, we just need 2 columns. So I'm going to go to 1, 2. And you should, if you have the preview option on, you should see our 2 columns appear in guides on each page. And here you can also adjust the gutter. I'm going to have it match my columns here. You can also fit the guides to either the margins on the page or the whole page, so the edge of the page. This doesn't really matter right now, but if you had more columns, like let's say you had 5 columns, fitting it to the page gives you a different look and a different layout than the margins. So that's a design choice that you can make if you need to be. Okay, going back to 2 columns, I'm gonna click OK. All right, so guides, they're just gonna help us visually decide where to put elements on this page. So now that I have the guides set up, this box is already set up kind of nice. It's sitting inside my margin. This box, I'm going to resize it so it fits nicer into the margin. I see some space issues in these boxes, so let's adjust where the text boxes are a little bit. So I have a space on top here, and I have just a little bit of text up here on the right side of our design, and then there's another space. So I'm just gonna adjust the height of these text boxes just a little bit to try to get rid of some of these weird spaces. I'm gonna adjust this again. And I'm actually just gonna put my cursor in here and get rid of that space by deleting a line. So now all of our text is at the very top and they're all aligned in our text boxes. Let's add some images to this design. I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and using my guides, let's draw a rectangle on this far right column going all the way to our bleed. In the practice files, we have a photo of horses that we are going to add to this rectangle. So go to File, Place. The file in the practice files is called obxhorses.jpg. Click Open, and it should drop that photo into your rectangle. Okay, so I want to see the horse's face. So I need to adjust where this photo is placed inside the rectangle. You can hover over the photo and you see this little circle appear here. You can also use the white arrow in our toolbar, which is called the direct selection tool. So using the white arrow, I'm just gonna click on the photo. Let's zoom out a little bit. So you can see the edge of this photo. So now I can just shift this photo right and left. There's actually several horses in this photo, so you can decide which horses you would like to feature in the photo. The last thing I want to do here, you never want the subject to be looking off of the page. Anytime you can have the subject looking towards the content, it's just going to help the design. So how can I fix this? I can flip this photo. So select the photo. In your Properties panel, you should see an option to flip horizontally. So flip the photo, and let's move the photo back where it needed to be. So now my horses are facing the text, and their eye line is heading straight towards the text, which helps you want to read it more. Let's add a headline with our text tool. Let's draw a text box right here. And we're going to write, "So much to do in OBX." So I want this type to match the type on my cover. I used an Adobe font called Dido LT Pro Bold. And this text is 75 point on the cover. I'm gonna do something similar for this headline. So let's change the font. Dido LT Pro Bold. I'm gonna make this text way bigger. Maybe not quite as big as the cover. Let's make this text the same color as our cover, so using that tan color in our color palette. I don't want this to wrap the way it is. OBX is on a line by itself, so I'm gonna adjust the size of my text box. So much to do in OBX, that reads a lot better. And let's hit our W key and just take a look at how this is looking so far. And last adjustment, I am just going to adjust our leading a little bit and make this headline a little tighter. Let's also style this body copy. The other Adobe font we installed is Roboto Light, or Roboto Light. So we need to use that same font for our body text. You can place your cursor at the very end of all your text boxes and click and drag across the text boxes to select all the text in a paragraph of text. Another way to select all this text is to just click inside the text box and you click on your keyboard shortcut Command A, you'll select all the text. I am now going to change the font to Roboto Light. And that actually adjusted the spacing a little bit on this. I'm gonna fix it. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to add a background texture to part of this page. We're going to use an image of a map, and then we're going to change the opacity of the map. So it's, again, it's like a background texture and just adds a little bit more information to our design. So let's choose the rectangle tool. I'm gonna hit the W key again so I can see my guides and my grid. Starting from the top lead area, just want to click and drag a box, and I want it to go right under my headline, and then I want it to extend all the way to the horses. All right, let's place our map file into this box. So File, Place. The file in the practice files we're going to use is called obxmap.jpg. All right, so it placed my file in the box. It did cover up our headline. We're going to fix that in a second. So you can use the white arrow in your toolbar. Let me zoom back out. We want to move this map around. I actually want to see the Outer Banks Islands in this map, which they're kind of at the bottom. These islands on the outer edge are the Outer Banks. So I like to see this angle of the islands right here too. And this texture up here is really nice. So anyway, adjust the placement of this photo. And zoom back in. Select it again. We are now going to change the opacity of this file. Go to Effects in your toolbar on the right. You can also find Effects from Window Effects. And let's make the opacity of this photo 10%. I'm going to hit the W key. It's adding a little bit of interest to our design and our layout, and it's meant to be a background element. So one last thing we need to do, I can see that it's overlapping our headline. So we need to right-click on this image and arrange send to back. So send the map behind the headline so it's not overlapping it. Next, we are going to add a line or a stroke to just underline our headline here. So use the line tool in our left toolbar. Start right under the headline and start at the margin. Holding down Shift, I want you to click and drag this line tool to create a straight line all the way to the horse. Next, let's go over to our stroke panel. This will allow us to tell this line how thick it's going to be. So with the line weight or the stroke weight, let's select 3 or 4. And I currently have a black line. That's not the color I want. So let's go to swatches. Make sure you select the correct swatch. We want to select the outline. We're going to change the outline or the stroke color. So we need to select that bottom swatch that will color our outline. And let's make it tan. All right, I'm going to look at this by hitting the W key with no guides and just see how this is looking. All right, I'm just going to adjust some of my spacing. I like to have our spacing be equal between elements. So between this text and this line, and then between the line and the headline, I'm going to make it about the same space. Okay, so that is our center spread. Let's get started on this last page of the brochure. It's currently blank, so we are going to populate it with content. We are lastly going to add a logo to our cover, and then we are going to export and package up our files. So since we have already styled this cover in our inside spread, I am going to use a lot of the styling that I've already created for our back page. So we are going to copy our text over to the back page and this photo and just swap them out for new text and a new image. So let's start with the image. I'm going to take this horse photo and select copy and then paste it to our back page. And hit the W key so I can see all my guides. And let's swap this photo out. We have a nice photo of a sunset that we are going to put here instead. I'm just adjusting the size of this photo. I want it to be about 1/3 of the width of the page. You can always go to, with the image selected, go to File, Place, to swap this image out. Today I'm going to just click and drag this photo in from my Finder. Click and drag and place it on top of this existing image, and it will swap the image for you. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this headline, the line, and this text box. So I have the same styling for my headline and text that's going on the back of the brochure. You can select all three at once by clicking each and holding down Shift. So they're all three selected now, the headline, the line, and the text box. And you can copy and paste it to your back cover. You can also copy and paste each element individually if that doesn't work for you. Let's go ahead and start editing this text. The headline will be visitor information. I want that to be on 2 lines. I'm going to do a return between the two. So that looks pretty good. That headline's a little long, so I'm going to move my photo over just a hair. I want to make sure I can still see my son in the image. And this text at the bottom. So we had 2 columns set up in this text box. If I select it and look in my properties panel on the top right, you can see this number up here is set to 2 columns. So when we copy that over, it kept the 2 columns. But we don't want 2 columns on this back page. We only have space for 1 column. So with this text box selected, I'm instead going to just make this 1 column. And this is not the text we want here either. I have a text doc called OBX Brochure 2 in the practice files. I'm just going to open that up on my computer so I have it available. And we're just going to copy and paste this text in to the text box. So let's delete the existing text, and then I'm pasting in my new text. And it should keep your text formatting when you do this. The text formatting is applied to this text box. So let's adjust the size of this box. This line that I carried over, it is actually overlapping my photo right now. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. You can adjust the size of this line, make it end at the photo, or you can bring the photo to the front so it's on top of that line. Let's add a CTA to our brochure back. So with the rectangle tool, let's create a rectangle at the bottom. And we created 3 color swatches at the beginning of this project, a tan, a light blue, and a dark blue. I'm going to fill this box with the light blue. And make sure your swatches panel, you're showing the fill and not the stroke. Let's add our URL. I'm again going to use some of the text formatting I have already created. So I'm going to copy and paste this text box again, move it down. We're going to get rid of this paragraph though and just type outerbanks.com. Let's make this text bigger. I'm going to use my character panel. We want this URL to stand out at the bottom. This text, I'd like to make it the tan color so it resembles our headline a little bit. And I'm just going to move it down so it's aligned with all of our other text items. If you have a bold version of the Roboto font installed, you might use a bold version. That's not super important. I think it stands out when it's a little larger either way. One small adjustment that I would like to make is this photo. The way it's shot is that the horizon is actually not completely straight. You can see it's tilting a little bit. So I think adjusting that horizon and making it straight would be a nice edit for this brochure. So I'm going to click on the image, hover over the circle so I select the image itself, or you can use the white arrow to select the image. And at the top in our properties panel, you can adjust the angle of your photograph by moving the percentage up and down. That is looking much more straight. You could even drag a guide down and make sure it's straight if you want. The last design element we are going to add a logo to our cover. And hit the W key so I can see my guides again. So let's add a rectangle. I'm going to place this logo at the very bottom right of my cover. And again, you can go to File, Place. I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to click and drag this logo into my box. So find the OBX logo.eps file, and let's place it in the box. So it doesn't quite fit in the box that I've created. So in the Properties panel, let's use some of our fitting options that we've used previously. I just like to click between these two usually and see which one works better. This one worked better in this case. It made the logo smaller. I think that logo is still a little large, so I'm going to adjust the size of it. Hover over the photo, select the circle, and then hold down Shift to make this logo smaller. Yeah, I want it to fit nicely in the bottom right of my design. Okay, so this brochure is finished. The final steps of this project. We are going to export this brochure as a PDF with spreads, and then we are going to package the files as if we were going to send it off to a printer or send it to someone to edit this file. Let's first save our file. File, Save As. Let's export this brochure as a PDF with spreads. Let's go to File, Export. So you have some different PDF options, PDF Interactive or Print. We are not prepping this for print right now. This is just for the computer. So I'm going to choose Interactive. Click Save. Just make sure that you want to export as spreads, not individual pages. And next, let's look at our PDF and make sure that it's set up in spreads. There's my center spread, and there's my back cover. So that looks good. Okay, let's package up our files. The reason you package up files is if you need to share your files with a printer, you need to share your files with someone else in your office, you want to make sure that all the images, the fonts, everything is placed together in a folder. So if someone else were to edit it, they have all the things they need in one place. So to make a package file, go to File, Package. This pop-up box shows you some information about your files. If you have any images that are missing or not linked, you will see those noted here. You also see the color space of your graphics and your images. We're not setting this up for print, so I'm not worried about the color space of my images. All right, I'm going to click Package. You might get a pop-up box that says Save. Make sure to save it. And this is just asking, where do you want your packaged folder to live? So I will choose here. You do have some options down below about what to include. We do want to include an IDML file. That is a compatibility file that allows people to open this file with previous versions of InDesign. And we do want a PDF. You can choose what kind of PDF it will include in the package. I'm just going to keep it at high quality print. So click Package, and it's going to run, and it's going to put all of your files in one folder. So now I've navigated to that file on my computer, and let's look at what all it included. So here it has my InDesign file, so it places an InDesign file in the folder for you. There's a PDF and their IDML file, which is our compatibility file. All of your images are in this links folder. And then document fonts are also in the folder here. So if I were to send this to, let's say, a colleague, they should be able to open this, and it should be able to open and then see all of the graphics, all of the images, everything they need should be here. One note about fonts: if you are sharing this with someone that does not have Adobe Creative Cloud, they may not have access to the fonts that you used in your document. Or if they do have Creative Cloud, they might need to activate the fonts in their Creative Cloud account to be able to see the fonts in the document. That's just because these fonts are owned by Adobe Creative Cloud, and so we are just borrowing and using them for our project. So anyone that opens this file will also have to do the same. They will have to borrow the fonts to see them in the project. And if you needed to send this to someone, the last step would be you can compress or zip this file up. So on a Mac, I can right click with Control click and say compress. And it creates this nice zip folder that I can easily email or upload to a file uploader. So that's our brochure project. Follow Cry Studio for more InDesign tutorials. Thanks so much.